Welcome back to Riffs and Rabbit Holes. I'm Jim, that's Charles. And it's been a while since we've had one of these. About 3 or 4 weeks. Just conflicting schedules and things like that. So, but we are back. And we're back because we have burning issues to discuss. Speaking of burning issues, the earth melting, the atmosphere collapsing.
Whose idea was this one?
Forests bursting into flames instantly, all because of
palm trees growing.
One president's bad decision, apparently. All right, so today we're just going to kind of talk about whatever. Just stuff that's kind of been parking in our brains here, and we're going to unload it. But I asked Charles earlier this week, because he posted something about the...
Oh, that's right. This is my fault. I forgot how this came to be. I did post it.
Yes, you posted, and you posted a Fox News article, of all things. That's what you posted on Facebook. And it was about President Trump's... I'm still getting used to saying that. President Trump's decision to pull the United States out of the Paris Accords. And Charles had a rather strong reaction to that. Relatively speaking, your strong reactions are kind of, they're still pretty...
They're not obstreperous.
Yeah, they're not obstreperous, They're not like mine. But nevertheless, you had pretty strong sentiments about this.
Idea. I think it's a
so
bad idea.
I want to... Here's what I like to do. I'd like to talk about that. Because honestly... most evangelicals, and probably the bulk of the people that are listening, at least at this stage in our podcast histories, are conservative evangelicals. And I would guess that most of them either don't know what the Paris Accord is, don't care what the Paris Accord is, or are glad that he pulled us out of the Paris Accord. So, since you're a distinct minority on that score... I think it'd be a good idea for us to talk about.
Well, for me, the issue isn't as much the Paris Accord, and I may be among those who don't know a whole lot about it. But it's essentially a global agreement to reduce CO2 emissions. To me, the bigger issue is, like you said, a lot of people, for whatever reason, because it's considered a liberal or a Democrat issue, they don't believe that climate change is real. All you have to do is be the candidate who says, here, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-gun, and you can pretty much say anything. And some people will vote for you and agree with your positions.
I don't think that's why they're where they're at on this, though.
Oh, I think that's why some people are there.
Well, yeah, but I think for most people, the reason why they're not upset about this is A, ignorance, which, hey, I'll put myself in that camp. I'm ignorant on this. But B, most of our media consumption that is conservative... it's pretty much an article of faith that climate change is a hoax, or it's simply a mask for a political agenda. And so, so tell me, give me the rundown. What's your perspective on all this?
I think the science is extremely compelling that climate change is real, and not only real, but very dangerous. And it's troubling to see so many people reject that out of hand as simply a pet liberal issue. That's a hoax.
Well, here's the thing, though. Now,
I choose to think for myself, by the way.
Okay, well...
as should everyone else.
As everyone should. Now, here's a couple things, and maybe you can jump off on this and educate us. I'm not going to say that climate change isn't real. I would tend to say, based on my very, very limited knowledge, and I'm totally open. All right, let's establish this. I am open to be persuaded anyway on this. My faith, my theology is not threatened by changing my mind on this. And I think that's important. I think people need to know that, hey, you know what? If you decide that climate change is real, that is no threat to your theology. And I think that's important for people to understand right off the bat, because it kind of unloads the weight of, if I start changing my mind, what's that going to, what are the implications for other positions I hold? Well, don't worry about it. All right, your faith in the Bible, your conservative evangelical theology is not threatened by deciding that climate change is a real problem or not. But right now, as of now, my position is, yeah, sure, climate change may be real. But I'm not convinced that is necessarily a result of what we're doing.
Right.
And I'm definitely not convinced that what is possible for us to do would change it anyway.
So that's like Freeman Dyson's position. Well, climate change is a natural thing. I mean, obviously there are fluctuations. If you look at best we can tell, atmospheric CO2 concentrations in years past have varied. Temperatures have varied. Global ice has varied. And it fluctuates.
Very basic principle. Correlation is not necessarily causation.
Right. So what would you expect to occur? Over time, they'll continue to fluctuate. But there's still pretty good evidence that that what we're seeing is out of proportion to normal fluctuations. For instance, out of the last 12 years, like the last 12 years have contained the 11 hottest years on record since temperatures have been measured. CO2 levels are far higher than would be predicted by just extrapolating from past levels.
Now, see,
CO2 in seawater is higher. Glaciers are melting faster. I mean, they're real observable phenomena. It's not made up. These things are actually happening.
Okay,
you're going to say the causation. How do we know? How do we?
Yeah, I'm not going to deny the existence of the data. It's the interpretation of the data that's the debate. And here's the thing, and I told you this before we started. Go online and try to find a reasoned, informed debate by two qualified individuals on the other side of this issue. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, one other thing is, are there reasons? Do certain people have a vested interest in denying climate change? Yeah, people who are invested in fossil fuels.
But are there people that have a vested interest in the industries that seek to benefit from?
Much less. I mean, there's always that. But you look at the average biology professors. I mean, people who actually study this stuff for a living are overwhelmingly.
What does a biology professor know about atmospherics?
It's not all atmospherics. It's hydrodynamics.
Well, okay. What does a biology professor know about hydrodynamics?
Some of them study it for a living.
A few. Most biology professors don't study that.
Let me revise my statement. Well, actually, many ecologists do. I mean, it's broad. Okay. I mean, but people who study this for a living, except if they are on the payroll of a large fossil fuel company, and they pretty much unilaterally agree that it's a real danger. And even if it isn't what we think it is, it's enough of a possibility that we ought to be doing something about it, because the potential consequences are pretty bad. Okay. I mean, we're going to leave a world that's uninhabitable to our...
Okay, now let's introduce the theological aspect of this.
I can't wait to hear this one. Wait, Don Blankenship. We know man can't change the planet. Only God can do that.
You're not talking about that guy that owned Massey Energy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He owned a coal company.
That guy ought to... Gee. I hope to... Is he still alive?
I think we better not go there, but...
I think they should put him beneath the prison. 29 miners dead because of that man. Anyways, moving on, because you're going to get me violent on that one. I have a very strong opinion, Don Blankenship. Thank you very much.
I bet you he's a climate change denier.
He's a scumbag. Anyway, yeah, I don't hold back. I'm sorry, I'm not going to hold back on that. He's a scumbag. 29 miners are dead because that man falsified his safety reports. Anyway, you totally lost my train of thought. Okay, theologically speaking, should we believe that mankind in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years is going to render this planet uninhabitable? Does that really fit into the Bible?
It would be rendered uninhabitable, but it would severely crimp life as we know it.
Well, okay. I mean, you had the Black Plague, and that crimped people's lives as far, pretty bad. So that's possible. Okay. All right. Now here's the thing. Let's get into the Paris thing.
Yeah, and that's a different argument altogether.
Here's my problem with the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto protocols and all this stuff. Is I think all of it is nothing but talk, and here's why. Because what they want to do, from a political realist's perspective, will never happen. You are not going to tell the developing world that is on the edge of finally enjoying the economic prosperity that we in the West have enjoyed for decades. You're not going to sit there and tell them, oh, by the way, stop developing.
Right, and it's another point made by Freeman Dyson.
Yeah, and they're not. There is the political ideal, and then there's the politically possible.
But if I recall, the Paris Accord allows developing countries not to implement until later.
Well, what it does is it basically takes the money from countries like the U.S. and basically pays them off and says, slow down, don't develop.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
It might, but the significant, if you look into the specifics, which admittedly I don't know well enough, it's in some ways is a bad deal for the U.S. because it cuts our emissions back a bit. We're restricted pretty significantly on fossil fuel consumption, whereas big, huge developing countries, India, China, they could be burning the heck out of coal. But to a certain extent, I mean, we're a global leader. If we don't do it, everybody else is going to slack off too. So I think here's
the problem though. You have an aging population in Europe. You have a relatively aging population in the U.S. Our replacement rate, population-wise, is not all that much better than Europe. It's a little bit better, but not much. Okay? For us to deliberately put the brakes on our economy when we have that kind of an issue facing us, that demographic issue facing us, it's not going to happen.
Now, putting the brakes on the economy is a different talk entirely. Then you'd have to talk about globalization, financialization.
I know this is a big fat can of worms.
Yeah, that's but
see, that's the thing. Is you're all right? Now here's and this kind of feeds into that.
Can't talk about financialization today.
Is you are talking about a Rube Goldberg machine. I mean, this is so complex.
The economy?
There's so many moving parts. I mean, it's like we've seen what happens because basically, really, what you're talking about is you're trying to have a managed global economy.
Yeah, but
managed economies don't work, i.e., the Soviet Union. I mean, it doesn't work.
How did we get there from Paris Club? Well, okay,
because the Paris Accords is part of trying to plan the economy towards an outcome.
It's not economic. It's much less economic than that, I think. But let's redirect.
Okay.
I would have less of a problem if the reason for instance, Nicaragua, a bastion of whatever, I don't know, they refused to sign the treaty because it didn't go far enough. Okay, that's neither here nor there.
They're not going to face any consequences no matter what they do.
Right, which is why I said a bastion of whatever.
Yeah.
I came unprepared to discuss them, but the thoughts underlying this, the thought processes are not, climate change is a significant danger. The specifics of this agreement are not great for us. Let's revise it. Let's make this and that change. No, it was, we don't think climate change is real. This is a liberal hoax. And that's dangerous.
Well, that's because Trump watches Sean Hannity every night. That's
but you've got people elected to Congress, mostly Republicans, Tea Party types. And again, I'm a conservative guy, but I'll say what I think. You've got people here on just a dangerous level of ignorance. And people who have no scientific expertise at all, who are sure that a human activity can't change the planet because only God can do that.
Okay, here's the problem, though. The average person that you're talking about that has a dangerous level of ignorance, and I have a dangerous level of ignorance. I'm not going to lie. I have not sat down and studied this issue. Now, I have a baloney detector that I think is good enough that I can usually tell when somebody's trying to feed me a lie.
Average person doesn't have a good baloney detector.
Okay, but here, average person wants to hear what they already think. Okay.
Now, the average person wants some guy who's smart and uses big words to tell them what to believe, to reinforce what they want to believe.
Right, but
that's what they're getting, and that's different.
But here's the thing: you have the smart people with the big words that are on the other side of this issue. And they're telling people climate change is real. You need to do this. You need to recycle everything. You need to drive a little teeny tiny car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what the reaction to this is, really. What kind of car do you drive? Oh, you flew in a private jet to this little appearance. And the hypocrisy piles up. And not only that, but you know what? And I think this way too. I look at some of these people and I'm like, I don't think you could change the oil in your own car. And you're trying to tell me how the climate works?
Well, but
I mean,
yeah, but this isn't. We shouldn't view this as coming from the political elite.
Well, it is coming from the political elite.
Yeah, well,
I'm not saying it's
perhaps,
only them.
Perhaps they should shut up, and then the rest of the people would take it more seriously. But essentially, every scientist, in fact, I'll go as far as to say this, essentially every scientist, except those who are on the payroll of fossil fuel companies, takes this seriously. And I think
they take climate change seriously. I have to keep bringing this back. Climate change, yes, but whatever
no, that's part of no. It's not climate change. They take seriously
AGW. I guess
they take seriously the notion that fossil fuel combustion is credibly changing. There are very credible evidence that is the agent of change. That is taken seriously.
That is the primary agent of change.
Yes.
See, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna fall back on a Rush-ism, which is really gonna make your head explode. But
not all of them. Most of them are pretty
there's
bad,
this huge burning ball in the sky that has a lot to do with our climate.
Yeah, but the heat from the burning ball is reflected out into the space, which is an absence of a burning ball, and is a heat sieve.
So
carbon dioxide traps heat.
Yes, but the particulates in the air from the pollution also reflect heat out.
Not all of them to the same degree.
True. But
and particulates are not the same thing as CO2.
But would you say that the number one actual greenhouse gas is not CO2, but water vapor?
The water vapor can definitely act as a greenhouse gas.
Okay.
As can methane.
Okay.
But CO2 is one we have a lot more direct control over.
But even if you got the CO2 back down to, say, 300 parts per million or billion, whatever it is, as opposed to, I think it's like 386 right now. It's getting close to 400.
Just unheard of.
Looking at this the other day.
But again, it's one thing to actually interact with this and have some sort of a scholarly view, but I think the average person doesn't. The average person sees Donald Trump going, yeah, this is a hoax. And they go, yeah. And that's dangerous.
The average person sees it as, I come from a family that has worked in West Virginia.
Yeah, and
worked the mines,
can't blame them for that.
Worked the fossil fuel industry, and now none of us have jobs, and we blame it on people like that who want to say that coal is bad. That's how, around here.
Oh, yeah, and here
that's the view.
Here it is very different because loss of coal has meant the loss of livelihood for.
But see, that's my main point is if you know I've watched some of these people talk about we need to do something, we need to come up with a plan. This is real, and I'm not trying to be Johnny Raincloud here, and I'm not saying that you don't strive towards a goal of you know maybe minimizing some of these factors here and maybe it'll have an impact. But you've always got the human factor. And the overwhelming majority of people are not going to change their lives for something that mega. I mean, it's too abstract.
Yeah, right, which is why
environmentalism tends toward totalitarian ideas. Because they know in their hearts that's the only way to make people do it.
And that's where some of the scientists have gotten in trouble falsifying some of the data. Somebody put on a Facebook post, it's been proven that these people falsify. No, they don't. There were a couple instances where people in favor of climate change probably, yeah, they fudged their data a bit, but that's the minority. Is it
true that the actual temperature change over this period that most of them focus on is really only like half a degree?
Is it half a? It's
like 0.8 degrees.
It's less than one. I think it's more than a half.
Now I got news for you. You're not going to motivate people to trash their economy over 0.8 degrees.
But this isn't about trash. Okay, this isn't necessarily about trashing the. Well, it is right in West Virginia, but I mean this has been known for years. Fossil fuels can't last forever. The supply won't last forever.
But it's a lot bigger than what we thought it was even 10 years ago. Especially oil.
It's big.
natural
Well,
gas.
yeah, I'm not sure that's the case about coal.
And here's the thing: I'm willing to concede that there is now. Here's one area where you and I will definitely agree, and I think there's no question on it. And this is where the business interests are our enemy on this, and we need to be aware
See
of
if you're
this.
going to say the same thing I'm going to say.
Is the local impact of the energy industry can
it's
be
huge.
absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go back to Don Blankenship. People like this are throughout the industry, and they really don't give a fig about destroying an area to make a buck and destroying people's lives.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, if you would have come at it more from that angle, instead of trying to get people to get on board on this very abstract, complicated area of, global warming, you might make more headway that way.
That's probably true. It's the same energy companies, too, though, that have known this for years. I mean, their CEOs probably have stock in the Sierra Club or something.
But here's the
they've
fact
known that, but they've known this for years. And what has been done? Looking for alternative means of energy? No. Looking for alternative means of economic development in these areas? No. Let's milk every last dollar out of this mining that we can. And then we'll pack up shop. We'll move to the Bahamas. And the people in Logan County will be screwed. They'll have no jobs other than the local hospital.
And you're right. I'm not going to argue on that. That's just historically true. But here's what it really boils down to: is the reason why the energy companies ultimately get away with all this is because we want energy. We want it now. We don't want to spend half our paycheck to get it. It's us. I mean, that's why they get away with it. They could switch and put, new scrubbers on all their power plants and get rid of all the pollutants and everything else and jack up your utility bill by 40%. And everybody's screaming and hollering. And I mean,
I think we're probably getting close to running out of time here, but
yeah, we are.
I think, for me, it would be a plea for people to use their own heads, especially as a Christian. I hate Christians jumping on the bandwagon, and being enlisted for causes that aren't, whether it's this one or the travel ban or some other controversial thing we could talk about.
Yeah,
we need to be driving positive change, not sitting in the back seat of someone who, as long as they say I'm anti-abortion, will sign on with everything else. We need to be in the driver's seat on all the issues, and we're not. And I'd like to see us be that. So that's where I'm coming from on this.
Here's my point of action that I would suggest on this. If you're listening, if the media that you are consuming does not offer a fair representation of different sides, and fair and balanced is a joke, okay? Fox News fair and balanced, that's a joke. All right, let's just get real and admit that, okay? If the people you listen to spend 99% of the time simply making the other side look ridiculous, it's almost 100% chance that you're not really getting the other side.
Yeah.
So and this issue is just kind of one example of that.
But news is all sound bites. You don't hear real explanations.
Okay, forget news. Start reading books.
This is true. And listening to good podcasts.
Yes.
So with that, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll come back next time with another.
Yes, we're going to go
30-second shred.
More rants.
Another 25-minute shred.
Yes, 25-minute shred. So thank you for listening. I'm not sure you learned a whole lot, but hopefully at least stimulated you to think in some directions and seek out some information. And let us know what you think on the website.
Thanks for listening to Riffs and Rabbit Holes. You can learn more about this podcast at our website, www.riffsinrabbitholes.com. That's riffs, the letter N, rabbitholes.com. There you'll find an archive for MP3 and video, plus a blog page and additional resources related to today's topics. You can also contact us there via email with any questions, comments, and even suggestions for future topics. That's www.riffsinrabbitholes.com. You can also find us on our Facebook page and also our YouTube channel. Again, thanks for listening. Peace be with you.